Beneath the silent waves of the Pacific Ocean, something powerful was moving. Unseen, undetected, and unstoppable. A massive shadow cutting through the dark waters, carrying enough firepower to erase entire cities in minutes. The world above had no idea that deep below, the United States Navy had just made its move. A move that would send shockwaves through China's military command. It wasn't a test. It wasn't an exercise. It was a message. For months, satellite images had shown unusual Chinese naval activity near disputed territories. Warships, destroyers, and submarines patrolling aggressively, flexing muscle in the South China Sea. The Chinese Navy had been expanding faster than anyone expected, boasting the largest fleet by numbers. But the U.S. knew something China didn't. Numbers don't win wars. Technology does. That's when the U.S. decided to respond silently. One cold night, the ocean around Guam came alive with whispers of steel. U.S. submarines, the deadliest ever built, began slipping out of their hidden ports. No news coverage, no announcement, just classified orders and a destination that no one dared to speak aloud. Within hours, a fleet of Ohio-class and Virginia-class submarines was on the move, vanishing beneath the sea like ghosts in the deep. To the naked eye, the ocean looked calm, but under the surface, America's most advanced war machines were traveling faster than sound, invisible to radar, undetectable by sonar. Each one armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles, hypersonic weapons, and nuclear deterrents capable of reaching any target in the region. What came next was not an attack. It was something far more calculated. As China's warships entered the South China Sea, their sonar operators started picking up strange readings, echoes that didn't make sense. For every direction they turned, something was there, but nothing appeared on radar. The Chinese commanders ordered scans, recalibrations, full-spectrum sweeps. Still nothing. It was like chasing ghosts. And that's when the realization hit. America wasn't hiding. It was showing itself, but only enough to be seen by those who understood. A strategic appearance, just close enough for China's Navy to detect faint traces of a submarine presence, but never close enough to target. The message was simple: we're already here. We've been here the whole time. The operation lasted just 72 hours. In that time, the Chinese Navy tracked more unidentified contacts than ever before, all disappearing within seconds. No visual confirmation, no engagement, just a silent statement of dominance. When the Chinese satellites tried to verify, they saw nothing. But U.S. submarines had already resurfaced thousands of miles away, completing one of the most precise shows of force in modern naval history. Experts later said it was psychological warfare at its finest, a demonstration not of destruction, but of control. The U.S. Navy didn't need to fire a missile. It just needed to remind China that beneath every wave, America watches and waits. But this wasn't random. It was part of a carefully planned message following a string of Chinese provocations near Taiwan and the Philippines. Intelligence agencies had intercepted communications suggesting that China was testing how far it could push before the U.S. would respond. They got their answer, not through words, but through silence. The U.S. submarine's message was clear. You can build ships, you can deploy fleets, but you will never find us until it's too late. And behind that message stood the most advanced underwater force in the world, a fleet that had been evolving for decades in complete secrecy. While China focused on visible power, massive aircraft carriers, parades, and propaganda, the U.S. invested in the invisible. It built machines that could disappear beneath the ocean for months, gather intelligence, and strike anywhere on the planet without warning. The Virginia-class submarines are a perfect example. Costing over $3 billion each, they're silent killers of the deep. Powered by nuclear reactors, they can stay submerged indefinitely, capable of launching hypersonic missiles that reach targets thousands of miles away. Their sonar systems are so advanced they can detect another submarine before it even leaves port. But that's just the beginning. What most people don't know is that these submarines don't operate alone. They travel with an invisible shield of drones, mini-subs, and AI-powered sonar decoys, creating an underwater illusion so complex that even if detected, no enemy can tell what's real. In other words, you can see the U.S. Navy, but you'll never really find it. And while China was flexing its fleet above the waves, the U.S. was controlling everything beneath them. American subs began mapping the ocean floor around key strategic zones, silently collecting data, monitoring communication cables, and tracking every vessel that entered the area. Within weeks, the U.S. had built an invisible perimeter around the Chinese fleet, one that China couldn't see, couldn't break, and couldn't even confirm existed. To Beijing, it was humiliating. The propaganda broadcasts that once claimed control over the South China Sea went quiet. Naval exercises were quietly reduced. Even Chinese state media shifted focus. No one said it out loud, but everyone understood what had just happened. The U.S. had reminded the world that true power doesn't shout, it whispers. And that whisper echoed loud enough for the entire world to hear. But the real shock came when intelligence reports revealed that during the entire operation, not a single Chinese anti-submarine system had successfully locked on to a U.S. vessel. Their detection rate was 0. Even their most advanced sonar arrays failed to pick up what was moving right beneath them. In military terms, that's not just a show of power. That's domination. The Chinese Navy had been outplayed, outclassed, and outthought. Their fleet was powerful, but it was blind. America's underwater ghosts had moved freely through their backyard and left without a trace. And yet the message didn't end there. The U.S. Navy followed the operation with a rare, calculated move, a publicized patrol. A Los Angeles-class submarine surfaced near Guam, visible to satellite cameras, and the U.S. Navy released an image with a single caption: "Maintaining peace through presence." It wasn't aggression, it was confidence. The kind of confidence that comes when you know your enemy saw just enough to be afraid, and just a little enough to never prove it. The message had been delivered, loud and clear. But few knew that this was only phase 1 of a larger strategic plan. The Pentagon had quietly approved a new deployment, one that would shift the balance of power even further. Something far more advanced, faster, and deadlier than any submarine ever built was about to join the silent fleet.
The operation had ended, but the ripples it created were only beginning. Inside China's naval command, confusion turned into silence. High-ranking officers demanded answers. How could an entire U.S. submarine fleet move through their monitored waters, undetected, and leave no trace? Every system, every radar, every sonar array was checked and rechecked. But there was no error. The truth was simple. America had outclassed them on every level. And what Beijing didn't know was that this wasn't America's full strength. It was just a glimpse. Behind locked steel doors at bases across Virginia, Hawaii, and Washington, new submarines were being prepared. Machines so advanced that even America's allies didn't know their full capabilities. They were known only by codename Silent Circle. This was the next generation of naval warfare, built on artificial intelligence, quantum communication, and stealth materials that absorbed sound instead of reflecting it. Unlike any other sub, these could think, adapt, and move with almost human-like decision-making. Each one was capable of detecting an enemy miles away, predicting its movements, and disappearing before being spotted. One naval engineer described it best: "It's not a submarine, it's an ocean ghost." The Silent Circle project was born out of a single idea: domination through invisibility. During the 2020s, while most countries were building ships and carriers for display, the US was quietly building something no one could see. Billions were invested in oceanic AI, underwater drones, and sound-canceling technology. By 2030, the first Silent Circle prototypes were complete. They could glide through the water without a single bubble, their engines producing zero acoustic footprint. Even the ocean currents didn't know they were there. So when the US sent its submarines to shadow China's Navy, it wasn't just a message, it was a live test of that technology. And it worked. Flawlessly. China's best anti-submarine ships, equipped with cutting-edge sonar, detected nothing. They weren't facing noise or radar signatures. They were facing silence itself. Meanwhile, inside the Pentagon, analysts watched the mission unfold in real time. Dozens of screens displayed streams of sonar maps, AI predictions, and encrypted feeds from underwater drones. The data was staggering. For every Chinese ship, the US Navy had 3 invisible units tracking it, some collecting data, others mimicking Chinese signals, others completely jamming communication. It was an invisible chess match, and the US was 10 moves ahead. But the true brilliance was psychological. The United States didn't announce this power. It let China's Navy figure it out on their own, through fear, confusion, and doubt. Every sonar ping that returned empty made commanders question their systems, their crews, even their own training. Every shadow on the radar that vanished in seconds made them realize something terrifying. They were being watched. Then came the moment that changed everything. On the final night of the operation, Chinese sonar detected what looked like multiple submarine signatures, hundreds of them. Alarms went off. Naval commands across the South China Sea scrambled. Dozens of warships repositioned, ready for confrontation. But after just 3 minutes, every single contact disappeared. Nothing was left but silence. It wasn't a malfunction. It was a calculated illusion created by the US Navy's decoy network. Miniature drone subs had released false sonar echoes, simulating an entire fleet. The Chinese Navy believed they were surrounded. In reality, there were only 3 American subs, and they were already gone. That moment humiliated Beijing. Within hours, communication intercepts showed urgent messages between Chinese admirals demanding an explanation. But the damage was done. The US had just proven that it could make China's largest naval fleet panic without firing a single weapon. The next morning, something unusual happened. Chinese state media, usually quick to boast about their naval achievements, stayed silent. No victory claims, no new drills, just silence, the kind that signals defeat. And while the world didn't see what had happened beneath the sea, the intelligence community did. NATO allies were briefed. Analysts called it the underwater Cold War, a war fought not with bombs, but with shadows, algorithms, and silence. But for the US Navy, this wasn't about humiliation. It was about deterrence. The operation's purpose was to remind every adversary that America still owned the deep. That no matter how big your fleet, how loud your threats, it means nothing when your enemy is invisible. Still, the story didn't end there. Behind the scenes, something bigger was being developed, something that would change the balance of power forever. Deep in a classified facility in Connecticut, engineers were finalizing the SSN-X program, the future of American submarines. These next-gen subs would merge artificial intelligence, directed energy weapons, and silent propulsion. They could detect threats across oceans and communicate using quantum signals that couldn't be intercepted or jammed. When a journalist once asked a retired U.S. admiral about the program, his answer was chilling. By the time you know one of ours is near, it's already gone. That's the level of secrecy and dominance the U.S. Navy operates with. And it's the reason no country, not even China or Russia, dares to challenge America in the depths. You see, wars may be fought on land or in the sky, but they're decided beneath the sea, where the cables, the data lines, and the unseen power flows. Whoever controls the ocean floor controls the future. And right now, that control belongs to the United States. But what makes this more powerful is the symbolism. The ocean has always been a place of mystery, dark, endless, unpredictable. The fact that the U.S. can dominate even that realm sends a message to every nation watching. You might see our carriers, but our real strength lies where no one looks. China's rapid naval buildup was supposed to intimidate the world. But what good are 300 warships if you can't detect what's right under you? That's what this operation proved. Power isn't about showing muscle, it's about controlling fear. And that fear now belongs to those who challenge America. As global tensions rise and the race for dominance intensifies, one truth remains. The silent giants beneath the waves are always listening, always watching, and always ready. Somewhere in the vast darkness of the Pacific, a lone submarine glides silently past the ocean floor. Its lights are dimmed, its systems whisper quiet. The crew sits in perfect calm, alert, focused, knowing that what they carry isn't just weapons, but a message. A message that every adversary already knows. You can't fight what you can't find. And as long as that remains true, the ocean will always belong to those who master silence.